Oh my gosh, welcome back everyone to JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything school didn't about job search and career growth. And I am so proud to say this is our first edition, our first live event in 2021. And you know when you're just so excited because you have a guest that you know is going to set the tone for your entire year? That's what I'm having right now. So I need to take a second to give you a little backdrop. We're going to be speaking to Fawn Germer, and the way this all came about, she reached out to me. She was writing a book and wanted to just, have a conversation. And it was one of those moments where you get on the phone thinking it's going to be 5 minutes and you realize you could talk to this person forever. And that literally, from that moment forward, we've never physically met. A pandemic hits. She's in Florida. I'm north of Boston. And still, our email communications and our Zoom calls, they're magic. And I feel so lucky when you talk about gratitude. I feel so lucky to know this woman. And then, of course, her book comes out well before a pandemic, but can we talk about how timely it is? I mean, how to win the job you want when you've lost the job you need. But I was saying to her, my favorite part about the book cover is this part, coming back. So we're going to give you the link and you're going to want to sign up for this book. But I would tell you folks, get the hard copy and just put it on a shelf somewhere. If you're in job search mode, if your career isn't where it is, if you got laid off in the pandemic, I want you staring every day at this phrase, coming back, because I think that's what we need to make 2021 the slogan of for all of the JT Talks Jobs folks. This is the year of the great comeback. Do we agree? I hope so. So I could go on and on about her bio, but it's so long and so impressive and so humbling. It's better for you all to read it. We're about to talk to a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist who has written a bunch of books. This one is her latest, but honestly, folks, just an all-around amazing person who really cares about people and them doing their best. And she gives it to you straight, which is the other reason I love her. So enough hype because I got to get her on the phone. Hello, my friend.
Oh, my friend.
Hey. It is so good to have you here. We were joking about the differences, folks. You can tell I am in the Northeast and that she is down in the South. And I wish I was wearing something nice and sunny. So it's so good to have you here. Happy New Year.
Well, same to you, my friend. But you left off the detail of how we really met.
Okay, give it to them straight.
Okay, so I have a friend that I'd met years ago as a speaker, and she was a very senior executive, got lost in a merger, couldn't get a job, was hitting the wall, experiencing a lot of age discrimination. And she wrote to JT, who wrote back some very blunt words. And the person sends me this email like, can you believe she said this to me? And I'm like, I kind of like this person, right? So I thought I got to interview her for my book. And I said, you wrote, and I was wondering, could I quote that and maybe talk to you? And she's like, well, what did I say? And so I sent all those blunt words back to her. And she's like, yep, sounds like me. And then I knew we were a match because we're all about the tough love, get in your face, fix it, get hired.
Yeah, so, it really is. And, folks, this is honestly, I'm going to say this book is for people at every age because you need the honest feedback. But I know that specifically you were trying to help people who, hit 50. And I hear this all the time. Fawn, they say, I never had a problem getting a job. I like that. I could get a job. And now all of a sudden I'm 50. And so immediately they drop to it's age discrimination and, that defense mechanism. And that's what you and I really got into about this idea of, okay, let's give it to you straight here. Let's not make these sweeping generalizations because it's not going to help you, which is what I love about your advice. So let me back up first, because there's definitely some questions I want to ask you. And folks, we're going to give you plenty of time to ask questions as well. But, besides us connecting through the tough love approach, I think one of the reasons that you've developed that is because you've talked to so many high level people. I mean, you've interviewed more than 300 CEOs, senior leaders, consultants, lawyers, and that really started to help you synthesize. I'm assuming your journalism background is the reason that you did all this, but, talk me through how that helped you shape a book like this one.
Well, I make my living as a professional speaker, and a lot of professional speakers motivational speakers have only one qualification, and that's that they're motivated, and they Google their talking points, and then it's just a mess. It just makes me crazy. But as a journalist, I always say I'm going to get original information that nobody has. And I did hear people telling me stories of horrific age discrimination. And I thought that was the book until I started interviewing all of these people and found out that, of course, there's age discrimination, but what caused that? And that's something that we can control. So I spent 3 years working on it. COVID hit. Being that I'm a reporter at heart, I could quickly add a chapter on that and update the rest of the book for what we're going through right now. So it seems like perfect timing, but it was a lot of work in the making. And also my objective was that it wasn't something that was my theory, but I wanted it to be something that was very true about what's going on in the workplace.
Yeah, which is, folks, it's so evident when you read this book. And one of the things that I know is you pointed out that these folks, oftentimes their career was falling apart far before they realized it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, because people put their careers on autopilot and they think as long as they're doing a great job, they will be respected and rewarded. And God bless you if you're doing a good job, because you have to do a good job, but that only gets you in the game. It doesn't keep you there. And what keeps you there is your relevance. And if you're not actively defining yourself with relevance, you're painting yourself invisible. So that means you're upskilling constantly. You're deciding what to read so that you're up on trends, changes, technology that's coming. You know what AI and robotics and machine learning and big data are going to do to your industry and your company and your job, so that you are the voice of the future. You don't have to be a programmer, but you have to know what those programs are going to do to impact your job and everybody else's.
So talk to me, because I want to go back to something you said, that you were looking at age discrimination. You saw some horrific cases of it, but the journalist in you said, well, I've got to go to the root cause. So it's a factor, but expand upon that. What were some of the causes? That's one of them, I think, becoming irrelevant. But what were some of the other things that you saw, or at least that some of these executives were telling you, were the reason these people weren't getting hired?
No, that is the big one, far and away, is that you have to be able to demonstrate insatiable curiosity. You're a lifelong learner, that you're going to contribute. So what happened, and there are some other things at play. The millennials hit the workplace.
Okay.
And this book also is for people who've taken time outs, like to raise kids or take care of loved ones or travel, because they have trouble getting back into the workplace. So these people see these millennials and they judge them and say they don't work hard, they don't do it like we do it, they expect everything right now, they'll march into the CEO's office, and they treated the millennials horrifically.
Yeah.
So there is a resentment between the two generations. The thing is, the millennials delivered. They had been, I think they'd been given iPhones in the womb so they could be fast at texting, but they could do everything technologically immediately, fresh out of school. And the boomers, because they had been in their jobs longer, had the biggest paychecks in the room. And yet these younger people were delivering more. And the boomers didn't really notice that. And the late Gen Xers, they didn't see it as a threat because they earned their status and they thought these other people would have to wait their turn in line. And now we're at a point where millennials are leaders and they're hiring people. And you can't write off an entire generation that has delivered. And especially the Gen Zers, they've got it going on more than the millennials. And so if you've got the biggest salary in the room and your company can hire somebody who is more agile, more tech savvy, ready to go for a third the cost, who's the better hire?
Right.
And they're not in the business of being nice to people. They're in the business of making money.
So amazing that you say that. And again, folks, I just want to show you Fawn's book because it's amazing. Get yourself a hard copy. You need to feel it, hold it, read it. You can see it's got a lot of depth to it. You paint such vivid pictures in this to help people understand and relate. And I think for some people here, they're saying, okay, I get it. I got behind. I didn't stay curious. I didn't stay current. Is there any hope for me? Because we have a lot of people on here, not everyone, but there'll be a lot of people on here saying, Fawn, I'm scared. I'm 6 months into the hunt. I'm 9 months into the hunt, and I should have had a job by now. Is it too late for me? So what do you say to those folks?
Well, a couple of things. One, you can get caught up, and I want to talk about that in a minute. I mean, it's definitely possible and everything. But at your age, the biggest thing you've got is your network.
Mm-hmm.
And we have done a fairly decent job at this point of learning that we have to have a network.
Mm-hmm.
We have to meet important people, but people don't meet them the right way. They get titles and they do elevator pitches, and then they follow up with an email. But really, if you're going to network me, you need to know that after 17 years, I'm still watching Grey's Anatomy. I love pit bulls. I live in Florida. I'm a passionate kayaker. So when you connect on a personal level, it's a lot easier to leverage your network. And you don't leverage a network by saying, can you get somebody to circulate my resume around?
Mm-hmm.
No, you say, can you hand my resume in person to this person tomorrow, then send an email reminding him that you or her that you sent it and introducing us. You say specifically what you want, because then your network can deliver what you need. Now, as far as getting caught up, it's a scary thing to think you're behind. The problem with a lot of people is they won't even admit it. I know someone who left the workplace to raise a child and has been out of the workplace for more than 2 decades. And I said, well, how are you on technology? And she just very comfortably says, well, what do you think? I've got a millennial for a son. And I thought, So that's your explanation for your tech savvy. Why don't we find out where you are? And why don't you tell me a little about blockchain in your industry, right? And because people are in such denial.
Yeah.
Now, when you admit the truth, which is that there's a lot that's happened that you probably aren't up on, then you can start doing things. And it's about reading, insatiable curiosity. So every day, check the websites for the Wall Street Journal and Inc. and Fast Company and the Harvard Business Review. And you don't have to read everything, but the summaries are important. And then start taking classes in the things you don't know about. Innovation, artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data, machine learning. And these courses at Coursera or edX are fabulous because you can study with the best professors from the best institutions for free and get caught up that way. And I took this class in innovation from MIT, and doesn't it sound like I'm really smart because I said that?
Yeah.
But that's why you take this, because when you litter your conversations with things you've learned in classes at MIT and Harvard and Cambridge, it shows that you're actively seeking currency, and the currency is being current. And when something gets confusing, go to the least difficult place where you can absorb it. So blockchain totally confused me. The idea that there's this one piece of data and it travels and it just was too much. So I started looking at YouTube videos and I still didn't get it until I found a video that said how to teach blockchain to a 5-year-old. And it was 4 minutes long. Perfect for me, right? So I watched this 4-minute video and then I was like, oh, I get it. Oh, and one thing about those classes that you take for free from those great professors. So the first time I did one, I was trying really hard to do well on my tests. And then I thought about something. It's like, I have my degrees and I don't need the credit and I don't want another degree. And it doesn't matter if I get Fs on my tests. I need the knowledge and the information. So don't even stress about the classes. Just get the knowledge.
Oh, I love that you say that so much. Okay, so I have so much to unpack. First of all, the chapter, those millennials in here is awesome. And you already gave a beautiful example of the disconnect and the combativeness that's kind of evolved out of the situation with millennials. Feeding into what you just said, another thing I've noticed about millennials and why they're so successful is just how naturally curious they are. They love to learn.
Right.
And they want time on the job to learn, to keep learning. But the older generations don't, as you said, they just stop. So, you just gave one example of how to get curious, take a class, stop getting hung up on the grade, just take a class. Have you seen any other examples or ideas of how to get people motivated? Because I think it's a struggle for some of the older workers, the more seasoned folks, to get back into learning mode. They're kind of like, really? I thought I was done with that.
Or they're afraid of it.
Yeah.
It's a great way to learn is to just ask a millennial. I mean, that's a great way to do it because they're happy to help.
Gosh, that's a show.
Yeah,
That's
they
a show.
just do
Ask a
that.
millennial. We should make that a show. It's genius.
Yeah,
Ask a
look at the
millennial.
money we could have. We don't need that Mega Millions jackpot, right?
Yeah.
But they're ready to do that, and people get afraid. And there several years ago, not several, a few decades ago, back when I was a reporter in Denver, they got these machines in the newsroom, and they kept telling us we were going to learn about something called the information superhighway. And that's all we heard about was information superhighway. And of course, the training occurred when I was on vacation. And when I came back, I said, is there going to be a makeup training on the information superhighway? And they said, no. And for 3 weeks, I thought my career was over because I saw all these other reporters getting on these machines that gave them access to the information superhighway. And finally, Karen Abbott, who sat across from me, came back to her desk, and I looked at her and I go, I don't know how to use the information superhighway. And she goes, oh, you don't? Come here. And she sits me down. And of course, the information superhighway was the internet, right? She sits me down, calls up a search engine. She says, you're working on what? I said, a series on casino gambling in Colorado. She goes, casino gambling, Colorado. Types it, hits search. All these articles come up. She says, click one. I clicked one. She goes, now you know how to use the information superhighway. So in my head, it was this huge thing that I had no clue about. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was so scared of all this technology. And it took 1 minute. So if you're afraid, just say, I've got some catching up to do. That's the first step. Like they say, admitting you have a problem.
Right. I've got some catching up to. I hope everybody's internalizing that, because again, millennials are not afraid to learn. They've been lifelong learners. They've been trained to learn. I think that's one distinction that you've made for me, which is huge. The other one is they're huge collaborators. They love to work together and solve things together. And I see a trend of the older generations. I think we were told be the best, be number one. So do you think some of that plays in, that old school mentality of, you've got to be the best. You can't let them see you sweat, right? So your point of the fear, I can't look like I don't know what I'm doing, when in reality, I don't know what I'm doing.
That's a part of it. But then think about, and you and I talked about this, these people come in their interviews and here they are, they're older and they're talking to a younger person. And they said, well, 20 years ago, I did this at IBM. And they're talking like they know everything. And what that does to the younger person says two things. You're out of date and you're not going to work with me. Right. And you don't tell somebody that, geez, I have a grandchild that's your age. That's not going to get you hired. You show them that you're a collaborator, you're willing to learn, you're excited about learning. And if you're not excited about learning, do you deserve your job still? Yeah. Seriously. I mean, at this point, if you want to stay viable as a professional, you have to fight for the right to do the work that you love. And if you love your work, don't you still want to learn about it? Yeah, that's it. That's it. You don't have a choice. Yeah. To learn to love learning. That's that simple. Folks, quick reminder. I am talking to the author of this amazing book, How to Win the Job You Want When You've Lost the Job You Need, Coming Back. I love, love, love this. I've told you that so many times. So in here, you talk about Go Gorilla. And I think you kind of gave an example with the networking. Talk more about that. What is Go Gorilla for the folks listening? It is just, it's no BS time. You have to make up your mind if you're going to be a winner or not, because right now, millions of people are unemployed. So that you can just say, there's no opportunity. I'll never break through. This is the worst of possible times. Or you can make up your mind that if 80% of the people have a problem, you're going to be in the 20% that doesn't. And yes, you're going to hit some walls and you'll see some obstacles. But if you make up your mind that you're going to just take the next step and the next and the next, you'll get where you need to go. And that means with your networking, you call in the chits. And I have done this for people before. Instead of just saying, can you send this to somebody, or what do you know about that position, is to come right out. And in the subject, I say these two words, personal favor, because I'm using my clout. And if you have clout to use it. You do that and you get your friends to do that and you constantly strategize. I have to say, doing a book with you in it is a lot easier than doing a book without you in it, because you are the expert on all of this stuff. And it's your job bucket list idea, which let me pass that to you because I don't want to claim that that's my idea. But that's the best approach to breaking through and going guerrilla, because you're actively making a plan. So tell them.
But I love the fact that you're saying personal favor. So I've seen so many times people, they're kind of dancing around or finessing in the email to get somebody to do them a favor without asking. I'm sorry, we can all read that in the email. We all know that you're fishing for something, or you're, would you mind, I'd love that your feedback or input. And you're saying, look, be vulnerable, own it. I'm a little bit behind. I need some help. Can you help me? It would be a big personal favor. I love that approach. There's nothing wrong with that.
And if they don't do it, they're saying no. So you got to let them go to that uncomfortable place where they have to do it. And honestly, of all the people I've asked for favors, and over the years, it's many, because I've learned don't ask, don't get. And of all the ones I've asked, it's only been a handful who've said no. And there's always someone else you can ask to do the same thing.
Right. Well, and going back to your example, though, of the networking, you were also super specific. So you didn't just say, can you help me out, and leave it open-ended. You're saying, I need a personal favor. Could you do this, this, and this for me? Very specific, set of actions. I think that helps a lot too, because I think people do want to help you, but if you don't tell them, it's too overwhelming to figure out what you need.
Well, yeah. And that's another point about going guerrilla. There is nothing that upsets people more than when you come to them and say, look, I'm really smart and talented. What do you think I should do with my life? Right? It's like, if you can't answer that question, you don't have the right to talk to that person. It makes them crazy. So look at your skills, do the work to figure out what it is you think you want to do, and then start going in that direction. And if you're still not sure what you're doing, that's when you send the emails to friends saying, hey, what do you see me doing? And people, what do you see as my strengths? But you don't do that when you have FaceTime with people who can impact change in your life.
Yeah. All right. So I heard this quote randomly this week from Kelly Clarkson, of all people. And it was, never ask for advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with. And I found that so interesting, because kind of going off of what you've been talking about, a lot of people go out and they just start soliciting advice. Like, what do you think I should do? But are they really thinking through who they're asking? And are they, and as you said, not being specific enough, wasted opportunity. And then they get all sorts of confused, because if you ask for an opinion, you're going to get it, but you may not like what you get. So how do you have people dial in on who they should be asking, right? Now that we've talked about what they should be asking.
Okay, can I give you a part two to what I think that quote needs?
Yes, please.
Also, do not hang your self-esteem on criticism or judgment from people that you don't respect, because it's so easy to lose yourself in that.
True.
So, wait, what was the question on that?
So talk to me, like, how do you choose how do you know you should be reaching out to a certain person?
Well, part of the time you look at their title, and that can be helpful. And then you never know who knows someone. So you ask everybody. Yeah, that's the biggest networking thing I ever learned, was that you never know who's in the room who's going to change your life. And you don't know who's got that power. So I just say, go out there and make your case to everybody, and don't be proud about it. Yeah. It's not embarrassing to need help getting a job. And at this point, I don't think ever at this point in history is it embarrassing to say you've been fired from something, because a lot of people have. So if that's what the story is, you don't have to put that like in letters on your head, or you can say you're laid off or whatever. People know that people need help right now. Yeah. So you say, I need help. And to figure out who you want to get, I like trying people at the top. It's not that hard to find people at the top. If I told you what happened this week when I needed instant action from the cable company, I'm not going to say which one, because this person will get a ton of emails, but I needed something immediately. And the local number said, yeah, we can't do that. So I wrote the CEO, who looked at the email in 5 minutes and then ordered it done, because it's your approach that matters the most. If you're earnest, if you're thoughtful, instead of just that fake sounding sales thing, if it doesn't have the right tone to it, nobody's going to want to help you. but you're a human being. So approach people in that way. And when my first book came out, and this is 20 years ago, but I didn't know anything about marketing a book. What I did know is that I'd lived a lot of years in Denver, Colorado, where they have the Tattered Cover, the largest independent bookseller in the country. And I had lost half my paycheck there. So I wrote Joyce Meskis, who was then the owner there. And I said, I lost a lot of money at your store and I need some mentoring and I don't have anything I can give to you, but I can pay it forward to the next person. Are you willing to take a call? Not only did she give me, like an hour and a half of her time telling me what to do, but she gave me the best signing I could ever have had. It was such a moment because I asked, and I asked the right way from the heart. So you're not approaching people as some wooden job applicant who wants something. You are approaching them as a human being who's trying to find the way in. And you don't show that you're desperate ever, because once you paint yourself with desperation, nobody wants you, even if they're nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't there? There's a distinction between being vulnerable and honest and authentic and human and being desperate.
Right.
And I think that that's the nuance that people don't see. Whereas I love what you're suggesting. Take a step back. Imagine you were in their shoes. What would you want to hear? What would resonate with you? People are just too quick to be desperate, like you said.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. All right. We have a ton of questions. We're going to start with a question from Rocky. Rocky on YouTube. Shout out, Rocky. Can you still get current if you're 61, Fawn? Should I go for a new master's degree or certification? I'm in IT.
Why not? Why not? If that's going to lead you on your path, absolutely. But that's going to eat a couple of years. How long do you want to work? Figure out if that's what you want to do. If you can afford it, I mean, why not? And you'll meet contacts that will then help you along the way. I just do believe that there's a lot of quicker learning available right now that may be able to help you in the same way without going through the cost and the time and the excruciating agony of dealing with the academics at this point in your life, because you may be, tired of that stuff.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm so glad you said that and you gave those examples. I mean, Google's talking about a certification they've got now that in 6 months you can take it and be making $90,000 a year. No college required. Right. So to your point, I think Rocky needs to go explore certifications or things that would take the pressure off the grades, but get the learning done. I love that. All right. Samantha on YouTube wants to know, I'm an attorney who took an involuntary career detour, but I want to get back into legal practice. How do I explain that to the employers I want to get hired by?
You just tell them you lived your life and that you're wanting your way back in and you're doing X, Y, and Z so that you're current. And this is what you bring to the table. And the legal industry is changing so much because of technology. So you can use that as a plus because you can say, all of that.
I do love that idea. Play up the tech piece of it. The other thing I noticed too, Fawn, people kind of have a chip on their shoulder about if they were out of the workforce, going back a few steps in their career just to get a job. How do you feel about that?
Sometimes you have to. I think you clearly want to start trying to get close to what you need. But if you keep hitting the wall and it's hitting the retirement account and you need to do something, maybe you do take a step back. But when you do it, you don't start looking. I mean, you keep looking every day to figure out what it is that's going to get you where you need to go. It's kind of a placeholder job. And they'll ask, are you really committed to be here? And you're going to say you are, because you are committed for that moment. But that's not how you're going to live your life. So if you step back, just prepare to step forward.
I'm so with you on that, because it's always easier to get a job when you have a job.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I see so many people take that lower job, blow it out of the water because they're not inexperienced. And suddenly they're fast tracking and they're making what they should be within a year, where they could have sat and held on and, like you said, drain the retirement account. And then you're really stuck.
Yeah. And then what do you do?
Right. So much trouble. All right. Michelle on YouTube wants to know, for IT, the issue is that it's very hard to keep up with everything on an expert level. So her question is, how much of an expert must I be and in what specific areas, or how do I pick and choose? Interesting.
That is interesting. I'm not sure how to answer that because I'm not an IT person, but I do know something that may be helpful because of, my previous life in women's leadership, which is that Men will apply for anything if they have no qualifications at all, right? They're good with it. They can fake it till they make it. But women will look at the list and they have to have everything on that list before they apply. And so I hear these guys talking about what they're going for, and then I hear these women saying, "Oh, I couldn't do that." And so I asked on a panel at Deloitte, I said, "What do you do when somebody says, 'Do you know blank?' And you don't really know it very well?" And they say, "Oh, I'm familiar with that." Like, "Do you know how to do X?" "Yes, I'm familiar with that." You don't have to say you're an expert on it, and then you figure it out. Guys do that all the time. They figure, "I'll get the job and I'll learn it on the fly."
Isn't that funny? Yeah, we've seen that difference so much lately. I also think that, you've pointed out, talk to people. So I could see finding the 5 or 10 things, going back to the interview bucket list, finding 5 or 10 organizations who are doing things in IT that you admire and talking to people there and saying, what are the most popular things that you need to know right now? What is your area of expertise? Because I think those are sort of the best guides as to what's relevant right now.
Right.
All right, Ruth has one for you. How can I have faith to get back to my feet after being jobless for a year?
I promise you that if you take the next step and the next and the next, sooner or later, you will get where you need to go. This is what it's about. I have kind of bad feet, but I like to walk really long distances on the beach, sometimes 10, 12 miles, 13 miles. And by about mile 8, I am in pain. But I've learned that if I'm in pain and I take the next step and the next step and the next step, sooner or later, I get where I'm going. And that's what this is. It's an endurance test. It's a test to see when you're willing to give up. And the biggest thing is, if it's been a year, do you have a really long list of steps you can take that continue to move you towards your goal, so that every day you've got 1 or 5 things you can do that will help you? Because I promise you, if you keep taking the next step and the next and the next, you'll get there. Mm-hmm. You will get there.
I love that. It's so important that people understand that, because I think as the time goes on, sometimes they slow down. They don't even realize they're doing it, but they slow down their activity level because the return on the investment hasn't been there for them yet. So to your point, it can feel a little painful, but you can't stop. I so agree with that.
And right, let me add one more quick thing that's really important. The longer you're unemployed, the more you know other people who are going through hardship, and you find plenty of places to commiserate online or in person. That is toxic. Mm-hmm. Those people have to be out of your vision and out of earshot for a long time now, because the more you hear that others are having trouble, it's very easy to assume that there is no opportunity and you're not going to make it. So you just get the blinders on, move forward. You can do it. But the negativity will only discourage you and throw you out.
And I think a lot of your book is around addressing that. You really help people get out of their own way with their mindsets and their limiting beliefs, which is huge and so important right now, because if you're going to make a comeback, you need to have that mindset, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael on YouTube says, I agree with Fawn's view, and this has to do with like the millennials and interviewing with millennials. However, I'm hearing from contacts that they need adults at the table. So how do you frame your experience as an asset companies are looking for? So this is key, and this is something you've always been so exceptional at. How do you frame your experience? But like you said, not be off-putting to, people at the table that are younger than you.
Well, the first thing is, your experience can be seen as much of a badge of doom as a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. Because right now there is just this wariness, like you're going to just talk about things that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they want to know your currency. So experience is a good thing if they know your current. So before you start saying what you did in the past and stressing that you're an adult, make sure they know that you're an adult who's still got it going on. You don't go in there looking like some frumpy, sloppy old person who's given up. You go in there, you're sharp, and you've got your quick wit, and you've got everything you've learned that currently will help you to succeed 5 years from now. And then you mention all of the other stuff that makes you an even better adult in the room. But you don't brand yourself as the old person. That will help nobody.
It really will. It's so funny. Quick story. We were interviewing for a role, and we do group interviewing at the company. This is back before COVID. And one of the candidates we brought in was clearly older than the rest of the candidates. She was wonderful. She was talented. She would have crushed it. But the moment she came in the room and she saw everybody was younger, this was her pose for the entire interview.
Oh.
And it just,
yeah.
if I could have given her any feedback, she put everyone off in the room. I mean, if there couldn't have been more clear a vibe of, I wouldn't want to work with any of you. Right. But I knew as a more seasoned worker, what she was feeling was defensiveness, and it was coming through. But you really have to pay attention. I guess I'm pointing out, you're talking about the look, the body language, all of it, the mindset. If you don't go in and present that, I don't want to say youthful, but more relevant, approach, it's not going to work. It's so key.
And it's not just that they sense that, you don't want to work with them. It's that you also can see in that body language, she's assuming that they don't want to work with her, right. And that they're not going to want her from the get-go because she's older. And you can't do that. One of the women that I interviewed in the book, Amy Shea, she's just this groovy person. And when she's in her 60s, everybody loved her because she was so cool. And every one of us knows somebody who is really groovy as they age. Just be that person.
It's so funny. I was telling a group today, I see it as a compliment on TikTok this week. This one person commented, said, I tell everybody to follow you because you're like that fun aunt that knows the answers. And I was like, that is exactly what I'm going for. Fun aunt.
I want to be you when I grow up, except I think I'm older than you. But it's like every time you do something, it's like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to learn that next, right? I haven't made peace with TikTok yet, but I'm working on my dance moves.
We'll get you there. Get you there. And that actually leads into a great question from Jan on YouTube, because we've been talking about catching up on technology, which I 200% agree with you on that. But Jan wants to know, what about what to catch up on, so to speak, on like leadership and management? Are you seeing any trends there in terms of those types of skills people should get better at?
Well, those are skills that you probably already are better at, and you don't even know, because the one thing that we do have over the millennials is that we have spent a lifetime communicating face to face. So that makes us better at dealing with people and being empathetic and all of that. So, stress that you can communicate and that you have leadership. And if you feel like you need better leadership, honestly, you can take courses in it at edX and Coursera. Mm-hmm. But every time you feel like you don't know enough about leadership, just read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the best book ever written. Just, what was it, 1928?
Seriously.
That tells you everything you need to know. So if you're feeling behind, just read it again.
Yeah, it's amazing. Trixie on LinkedIn is asking, what's the best way to demonstrate that you're a lifelong learner? So are we supposed to be conveying that in a cover letter, or do you wait till the interview? Because I don't think you want to say, hey there, I'm a lifelong learner, right?
Right. But you can say, hey, I see your company is doing X. And I just read about a company doing something different with that in Inc. magazine. I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool? Or something. You bring things up. Sometimes in the cover letter, but I really like what this very intelligent person I quoted in my book said about writing disruptive cover letters. And I would leave that to you, JT. But it's how you sprinkle that stuff in conversations. It's just, I was taking this class and I saw that. And I was reading in Fast Company that it makes it sound like all you do is get more information that will make you and everybody around you more successful.
It really is. And it's not hard to do. And the cool thing about that is you're not even bragging. No. You're just recounting something that you read. But by default, right? Like you said, when you said, I took a class at MIT, there's just something that changes there when you hear it. It's such a smart way to go. I love that you outlined that.
I know.
Anna on YouTube says, I'm learning some of those companies who are on my bucket list. Can it backfire if I show on my LinkedIn profile the bucket list of companies to my peers who are also competing for those jobs? What if they see it? So I think Anna's asking, do you take that bucket list and do you publicly announce it to the world that you're looking at these companies?
So what I would say as an answer to that is I have to defer to you, because what do you say? You're the one who created the bucket list.
My only concern about putting it someplace public is that now they're going to say, well, you don't want to work anyplace else.
Oh.
So we generally say, put your list together and then individually email people, like you said, personal favor, and say, I am looking to meet people at one of these 10 companies or a company that's in a similar industry. Would you be able to introduce me to one person? Because I find if you say one person, everyone can hook you up with one person. And then if we're smart about it, when we meet that one person and we have a great conversation with them, we ask them, could you introduce me to one person? And then you never have a shortage, right? But I do worry about putting it out there public because people might then assume, well, those are the only 10 companies you want to work for. What do you think?
Well, and it's kind of like, what would you gain by that, except perhaps they see that they're one of 10? There's just not really any advantage to exposing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Oscar on YouTube says, I have an engineering and oil and gas consulting background. I was laid off due to the industry downturn. How can I apply my consulting experience and improve my overall job outlook? So it sounds like Oscar wants to leverage the consulting experience, but maybe get out of the oil and gas industry. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you look at all your skills and that goes in that kind of resume bucket of skills, and that makes you more viable. And then you figure out where it's going to be salable and you take it there and put the new places on your bucket list.
Totally agree. All right. Tom on YouTube says, how does the over 50 worker, Fawn, successfully gain knowledge and meet people in a field that they have no previous experience in? So now we're talking career change.
That's not that hard, especially right now. I mean, has there ever been a better time to network than during COVID? Now, I know a lot of people think, but there are no networking events. But what you've got are a bunch of people who are really bored and at home doing nothing. And you can have conversations with them via Zoom. So you figure out who you need to know, and then you ask for your 15-minute coffee and Zoom, and then you start to get a network that you then stay in touch with and then leverage.
Yeah, I remember you and I were on a chat one day and you were telling me that you literally just messaged out to 15 friends and said, I'm going to put this Zoom call together. And like almost all of them agreed to do it, right?
Well, and the thing about it was that these were very, very, very senior people, even like CEO levels, big names. And there is no way in hell that you would ever get all of those people in the same room to network at any time. And this was during the lockdown, and I sent it, and I didn't even say, let's schedule a call. I said, this call will occur Tuesday at 6 p.m. And 100% of them showed up because people are at home with nothing to do. And the other thing is people like to help people. So if you approach them the right way, they'll do what you need them to do.
Yeah, it's so true. So let's continue with that because Jay Adger is on YouTube saying, I'm a boomer. I got right-sized in February. I'm balancing my time between job hunting and consulting, but my ultimate goal is to be a chief marketing officer in like a startup or an early stage company. So how do I upskill my networking level to that higher level? So, this person's looking for C-level, but I think everyone out there wants to understand, how do I go to that next level of networking with higher level people?
Well, every time there's another level that you're not quite sure how to crack, you get somebody who's at that level to tell you that. And I do have some friends who are CMOs, and there is a CMO organization. So that makes that very easy for you. You look at people who are quoted in news articles as chief marketing officer, and then you look them up on LinkedIn, or you figure out what their email is and you write them and say, hey, anyway, we can get some mentoring here so I can figure out how I can make this work.
Yeah, you just got to do it. And I think he keeps going back. And again, everyone, please pick up a copy of the book. You will not be disappointed. This thing is awesome. But it goes back to what you say, guerrilla style. You got to do it. It's not going to kill you to reach out to somebody. The worst they're going to say is no. It's not, but you've got to do it. And the only way you're going to get better at finessing that is if you do it. All right, going back to age discrimination, Rocky says, I noticed that some interviewers have common questioning that they use that leads to revealing your age, and that there are then consequences to that. How do you handle that? So, I have some thoughts on it, but I want to hear what you have to say.
I will defer to you on that because I'd probably handle it with a 4-letter word, but there are legal things they can say and can't say. there are legal things they can do and can't do. It's infuriating. It happens every single day. And that on my end is why, more than anything, it's about getting someone to bring you in than coming in blind.
All right. And that's and that's one of the points that you make in the book. This is the whole network is your net worth thing, folks. If you're getting referred in, you are immediately looked at differently. Here's my thing about the getting asked questions that lead to your age. If they're starting to ask those questions, I'm going to say something really controversial right now, which is you've probably done something unknowingly in the interview process that is making you come across older and outdated. Because if they're loving your attitude and personality and curiosity and knowledge level and communication style, everything you've been talking about today, Fawn, if they're loving that, you don't care how old the person is. You don't. But I feel like that discrimination piece really starts to come in when somehow that thing you've been talking about, somehow you're giving off that vibe that is creating that thought that you're acting older and that you might bring some of that baggage. I don't know. I know it happens, but I wish people would try harder with some of the techniques that you're talking about before they just so quickly dismiss it. And I'm not picking on, by the way, I love that this question got asked. Let me just say, Rocky, love that you asked that question, because I want people to hear this and not judge and dismiss so quickly. Does that make sense?
Honestly, I had a radio interviewer this week ask me my age.
Huh.
And I said, yeah, I'm not going to share that. Because I write in my book, don't share it. Now, honestly, anybody who knows me knows I say it all the time.
Yeah.
And we'll just say I had a milestone birthday recently. And I am on my game, so I don't have anything to explain, but I don't need to say my age because, like they said, that's how people will pigeonhole you.
Mm.
And she goes, I don't know why you have a problem with it. I'm 74 years old. And I thought, well, no wonder you seem like such an old bat on the radio. It's like who you are says how old you are. And the problem is so many other people do it wrong that they have assumptions about you, even if you are the groovy, cool one. But you just got to go in there and you've got to present yourself. And that may be a standard question also. It may be that they're weeding people out.
It could be a compliment too. Yeah. They could be like so in awe of how cool you are that they're naturally curious. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know. There's so many ways to look at it, but I like what you said. Like, if you don't want to reveal it, just say no. I'm not going to answer it and be you. That's huge. Okay. Once somebody has accepted your connection, this is Carol on YouTube. What's next? Like, what would you do, Fawn? So you ask them to connect with you and you only have 300 words on LinkedIn. Do you send them a simple thank you? Do you dive right into your response? What would you do in that second follow-up?
I would watch very closely every single thing they post and comment on every single one of them about what a good point that was. Give them the love in advance, and then they're going to want to know who you are. And then you say, hey, I've been looking at your posts and I really agree with X, Y, and Z. And I really want to work in that company. Can we have a chat?
I love that idea. And I think a lot of people feel like once somebody accepts their connection, they're supposed to jump right on that conversation. But if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying, hold off a bit, study something. And then when they post something of interest, that's the time to start up that conversation, which would be very similar to if you were face-to-face at, say, a cocktail reception or a networking event, right? You'd kind of wait to dive in and start talking to something that you felt connected to.
Well, I think there's a difference between requesting something via LinkedIn as opposed to an email. And I'll tell you why. On LinkedIn, if you were to look at my inbox of the crap I get from people who want to connect with, I want this from you, I want this, I do this, right? I read none of it because it all looks alike. You're jamming up my mailbox. I hate it. But if you email me and say, hey, do you mind doing this? Chances are, I'm going to say the following. I don't mind that at all, but get back to me in 3 weeks. I'm really loaded down right now. And the reason I say that is I want to know that you really want me. And if you write me back in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, I'm going to do it and I'm going to help you. And it's amazing how many people don't. But that's my delineating thing. Now, in terms of email, let me tell this really quick. I am famous for tracking people down and getting anything I want because of an email. I've got an ice maker for my freezer, brand new Keurig. Whenever anything's wrong, I just figure out the CEO's email and I write them. Now, I don't think you should always go to the CEO. On LinkedIn, you figure out who it is you need to contact. And then you study the material on their website, whether the press page or whatever, or there are places you can search this to figure out the format of the email in that company. So it might be first name dot last name at nameofcompany.com, or it could be first initial last name at nameofcompany.com. You figure out the format. And if you don't quite know what the format is, put the first one, comma, second. It's either first name underscore last name, first initial last name, first name dot last name. It's usually one of those three, and then the format for the company. That gets you to the person, and you often get a response. Now, I always believe when I write companies, if they do something right, I let them know. And I had a really good person assigned to me from Apple because I had a bunch of problems. And she stayed on it and did such a good job that I wrote Tim Cook to tell her that she did a great job, knowing that somebody would get the email and say, hey, somebody wrote the executive office. She got a letter back from Tim Cook, okay? But you never know who's actually going to read it. And your approach is everything. But I say email is the tool once you have the name.
I love that. Did everybody hear that? Email is the tool. Once you have the name, go and do a little due diligence. You just outlined it. It's not that hard to do. And I also love that you said, look, sometimes in your own case, somebody asks for something and you say, come back to me in 3 weeks, or I'm busy now. If you really want it, you'll do it. So for all of you out there that ever got maybe initially dismissed, don't write them off. There can be another way to go back to them. But I just think your whole strategy of getting people into conversation is so fantastic. And one that I just want to tell you, Brian on LinkedIn is saying, I'm not seeking a job. I'm trying to land positions on a couple industry committees that I'm passionate about. And this has been so insightful. And I can see where this is useful and where it's held me back. So this is really the secret sauce, isn't it?
By the book. Yeah. Hey, well, one thing about me delaying people, if someone says, I need your help right now, and here's why, I'll respond. It's that when they write and they say, you've written a lot of books and I want to write a book. And I do coaching on that, but I know that what they want is some free advice. I'm happy to do that, but everybody says they want to write a book, and that's when I do that. But if it's a specific thing you need right now, you need to make it clear.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. That makes complete sense. Okay. I cannot believe where an hour goes with you. It's crazy. Talk to you forever. Folks, the link is in the feed right now.
And we got a good freebie for them too.
Buy this book. This is your foundation book. I am not kidding you. Coming Back. It's called Coming Back. How to win the job you want when you've lost the job you need. This is it. I mean, just the way it's written, you are going to love, love, love this book. So, and you know me, if you've all been with me on JT Talks Jobs, I don't recommend books. I think you're my very first book recommendation. I seriously think you are. I don't do them.
I love you so much.
But this is legit stuff. And so I'm so excited. So listen, here, a couple things. Everyone can go find you where? Where do you want them to go find you?
Okay. FawnGermer.com. So that's FAWNGERMER.com. And I've got a giveaway. So some cheats on how to recharge your career during COVID and taking the next step. And you all have that link, so they can go to that and get that.
Did you hear that, folks? And I know we're putting Fawn's website in there. Go over and get her freebie because it's COVID related, very timely. Keep taking in this information because she truly is an inspiration. I just love it. You know how to pat people on the back and kind of, kick them in the, at the same time, get them moving, get them out of their own way, which is so important right now, right? So important. Okay. I just want you to wrap up like one last piece of advice. What's the one thing we didn't ask you today, or the one thing you want to make sure everybody leaves with as they go into their weekend?
Well, it's Winston Churchill. Never, ever give up. Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. He went to give a commencement speech, and his speech was never, ever quit. And then he just kept repeating it. And if you believe that you're done for and that it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. It will happen. And you can make success. You have to decide to win, and you have to say, I'm not done. So you fight for the right to do what you love most, and you'll break through, and I believe in you. You've got to believe in yourself.
I love it. Folks, go show Fawn how much you love her. Today, go get this book. I am absolutely telling you, you will be messaging me and telling me it was the best thing that you did so far in 2021. And I just want to tell you, the modern day version of that is our slogan, which is, team, you know what it is? If you want to win, you got to work it daily, right? Don't ever quit. You got to work it daily. So, Fawn, thank you again. You know you're going to have to come back. So we're going to have to have a follow-up.
You know,
yeah, you're going to have to come back and do a follow-up. Folks, please go give her some love. Follow her on LinkedIn. Visit her website. Just get some inspiration. She's top-notch. And as I say to you all, be good, press play on life, and we will see you next time on JT Talks Jobs.